Welcome, everyone. So great to see all of you, and thank you for joining us. I'm Janice Ross, WiT President and Managing Partner at Brand Fresh Management. I know a lot of you are just kind of jumping in right now, but I just wanted to welcome you and to our conversation today, supporting mental health and wellness for women in the workplace. This is a really important topic for all of us, and I'm really happy that we're bringing together industry leaders today to learn about what their companies are doing to support the mental health and well-being of their employees, to discover best practices, and just to explore new ways around, new ideas around the topics so we all can kind of move forward as best as we can. But before I jump in and we get going, we really want to know who's joining us today. So I wanted to let you know that we've got the chat open. And just let us know, who's joining us, where you're calling in from. We are a global community, so I always love when we get our friends from over the pond and elsewhere. It's super exciting for you to join us. See everyone coming in. So thank you again. So as I mentioned, today's topic is supporting mental health and wellness for women in the workforce. And I just want to share this topic is particularly important to me. Like so many of you, and you've shared with me, it's been a tough couple of years. And I know that we've all had major disruptions in our lives. I don't know about you, I'm juggling a business and kids moving home from college, and my routine and workout schedules and everything is just kind of went by the wayside. And so it creates a lot of anxiety, candidly, and just difficulty in just kind of managing my way through some of the daily stuff. So with that in mind, I just know, like I said, that so many of you have shared your stories with me as well. And coming together to talk about it, I know that we're all going to leave today with, I think, a lot of really good, tangible takeaways. But before I introduce our speakers, I'm going to turn it over to AC, and she's going to go over a few housekeeping items so that we can jump in. So AC?
Thanks, Janice. Just a few quick announcements and notes about Zoom. We will be recording today's session, so if you miss anything, you can watch it again. That'll be available on our WiT website on the resources webpage, which will also have all of our other recorded WiT webinars. At the end of today's session, if we have a little extra time, we will take some questions for the speakers. If you have some questions, you can drop them down into the chat box or the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Thanks for joining us. Back to you, Janice.
Thank you, AC. So now I would like to introduce our speakers. With us today is Lindsay Berger. She is National Account Manager at Melissa & Doug, and Lindsay will be moderating today's discussion. Amy Kropp, VP of Global HR at Jazzwares. Linda Morgenstern, she is VP of Brand Management at the Beanstalk Group. Tara Deacon, EVP and Chief People Officer at Spin Master. And Angela Bodie. Angela is a psychotherapist and founder of the Hope and Wellness Partnership. Angela's a licensed clinical social worker, and she's got over 20 years of experience supporting patients in a lot of different areas, from depression, anxiety, adjustment disorders, and many, many more. Most importantly, she is passionate about helping people, and we are thrilled to have her join us today to share her expert insights and to provide us with really actionable steps that we can all take toward better mental health and wellness. So without further ado, Lindsay, let's jump in and get started.
Absolutely. So first off, thank you to WiT and to our panelists for being here today. Again, as Janice said, this is just such an important topic, and also one that's not the easiest to talk about at times. So we're going to go through a couple of different topics. The first kind of group of questions we're going to ask our panelists focus on the impact of stress, anxiety, and depression on the workforce at both the individual and organizational level. According to the National Institute of Mental Health, nearly 1 in 5 US adults live with a mental illness. The prevalence of mental illness is higher among females, 25.3%, versus males at 15.8%. In getting ready for this presentation, I read a lot of great reports and research, and one of the better ones was from Mindshare Partners. Their mental health at work report, it said 68% of millennials and 81% of Generation Z have left roles for mental health reasons, both voluntary and involuntary. One thing I love about the toy industry is that we have a lot of lifers. Once you're sucked into the industry, most never leave. It's imperative for companies to support younger generations entering the industry in order to promote excellence and retain amazing new talent. One research response that struck a chord with me was 91% of respondents believed a company culture is very important. In an article entitled, "It's a New Era for Mental Health at Work," I think the authors phrased the following statement about mental health and company culture perfectly. It said, employees need and expect sustainable and mentally healthy workplaces, which requires taking on the real work of culture change. It's not enough to simply offer the latest app or employ euphemisms like well-being or mental fitness. Employers must connect what they say to what they actually do. So with that, I'm going to offer up our first question to our panelists. And our first question is, while mental health has come to the forefront of conversations both in business and in personal settings, many find it hard to breach this topic. How are companies helping change this mindset and make it safe for employees to ask for available resources when they need it? Amy, do you want to take that one to start?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it. This is such a very important topic and very glad that you guys are focusing on it. For me, I think to change this mindset, one of the things that companies really need to do is just reinforce this message about available resources. So, for most companies, the employee assistance program is available as part of a general benefits package. And, it's often not used the way that it could be like other medical benefits. So we really took the tactic to make sure that at every opportunity, we are reminding our employees of this tremendous benefit to be able to go to the employee assistance program, get free counseling sessions that are completely confidential. We talk about it when people are hired. We send reminder notifications to everybody just to kind of keep it in the forefront of everyone's mind that this is just part of life and that there is an opportunity to have somebody help you if you have a particular issue. So we're also making sure that managers understand that this is available for their employees. Because, oftentimes it's hard to separate work life from home life, and things that are happening in an employee's life at home could have an impact on their ability to perform their job. So making sure that our managers also understand when they're dealing with people issues that these resources are available. So that's one thing. It's a really continuous message for us.
That's great. And Linda, do you mind hopping in on this one too? Linda, I don't know if I can't hear you.
Oh, is that better?
Oh,
Yeah.
much better. There we go.
I have two mute buttons. I just wanted to thank WiT and all of my colleagues for highlighting this important message. So we do the same, Amy. At the very beginning, when we hire people, we are very clear what all the resources and the services are. The employee assistance program has actually increased from 4 to 6 during COVID. The number of free sessions, confidentiality, of course, a very big part of it all. So people really feel confident that they're, that this won't be shared in inappropriate ways. But in addition to that, we have other kinds of training all year round. We did a really broad resilience training where we flew everybody in which was pre-pandemic. So it was kind of prescient that we said, oh, we need to know how to be resilient in a changing world. We do breath work sessions. We have sleep workshops. I mean, we've really started to do a full complement nutritional solutions in Mental Health Week, which is in the UK. In the US, we gave everyone a half day off to pursue something that would improve their mental health, be outside, just anything that's their happy place. And regularly and also for managers, we had a mental health first aid training, to your point, Amy, that you need to tell the managers what to look for, the signs that some of the talent is suffering.
Yeah.
That was great feedback. So the next part of this question would be, what are some of the most significant stressors you've personally encountered in the workplace, and what tools would you recommend to other people to overcome those? Tara, if you want to take that question.
Sure, sure. And I would just echo everyone's remarks about it's wonderful to be here and with this great group of people from our own industry. I think I would build on, so the most significant stressors, I always say I'm a person just like everyone else who comes to work and wakes up every day. But I think it's everything. I'm a working mom, so it's that balancing of working remotely and having kids at home in school and having a spouse that's also at home, and that amount of togetherness as a family unit, right, is a stressor. I think as it relates to the workplace, one of the things I found the hardest was the loss of what I call the moments of transition, whether that was the commute to and from work, the time to travel to see colleagues that was often, a beautiful moment of alone time where you could reflect and organize your thoughts. And it was as simple things like not having that time to walk from meeting to meeting or place to place in your day, that you just would sit on your screen and connect a button. And so you forget in the moment of what all of those small moments make up in terms of being able to create balance and move from one version of yourself to the next, if you can, or organize your thoughts. And so I think that was really difficult. In terms of how do you overcome them? Well, you have to force them back, right? And so building kind of to the first comment, something that we've done at Spin Master and continue to do that got into how do companies manage these stressors, but also reduce the stigma around mental health and stress is, in our organization still today, it's a part of the everyday conversation. So we created meetings that were about nothing than mental health, where employees could get together and talk about what was the COVID experience in their community, what was it in their house, how do we all feel about the headlines we're all reading on the paper and what we're seeing on the news every day, and what emotions was that generating. And similar to Linda, it was group meditation, it was breathing exercises, and it was allowed for sharing. And then what we realized is, wow, people needed these outlets and moments of transition. So how did you put them into the calendar? And so we are an industry of artists and creators and very unique people. And so let's have music minutes, let's have meditation minutes, let's have every month show the hobbies we all learned, right? To just force that time back is what I would say, Lindsay.
No, those are all great suggestions. I feel like I've already learned so much. Angela, do you want to hop in?
Yes, thank you. Thank you. And thank you for having me. Tara, is that Tara? I believe that was great. Back to Lindsay's point of just what you said about what they're actually saying, what they're actually doing. So your companies are really making an effort to make mindfulness a part of the day-to-day practice, right? To kind of incorporate that in the day and destigmatize the myth of, oh, if someone is sad, if someone is having a bad day, this person needs to be pushed to the side, or this person's not meeting productivity. You're making an effort to have them be able to express, and the culture that involved in being able to express is perfect there. A couple of quick things I want to grab. I'm sorry, I'm kind of scattered there. Moments of transitions. I like that you said you created moments of transitions. As Tara spoke about, we're able, when we're staying at home all day, we're getting up, we're getting out of our bed, we're putting maybe on our robe, or maybe we're putting on our shirt just for the camera, right? Brushing our teeth and getting ready. But there's no time away from home where we're getting in the car, turning on our music or a podcast to kind of calm ourselves, or just stepping away, taking a few moments for yoga. Just creating that atmosphere and culture in the job is very important. So not having that rush time when you come in, okay, at 8, we got to start, we got to get ready. Giving someone time, maybe 10, 15 minutes to just kind of tune in and ground themselves is important. So any type of psychoeducation that you're giving to your employees is exceptional, and I really appreciate that. Very good, ladies, very good.
Thank you, Angela. So in continuing, we're going to focus now more on specific challenges women face. The pandemic has led to an unprecedented mental health crisis. But even before COVID hit, women in the workplace have always faced specific challenges around mental health. The list is long, but many challenges are largely invisible because women are wary to talk about them, much less at work. Some of the challenges include twice as likely as men to experience depression, anxiety disorder, or PTSD, more likely to battle eating disorders, Facing pay inequity, caregiver responsibilities, and gender-based violence also contribute to mental health conditions. And then another thing on top of that would be infertility, menopause, and postpartum depression also happen. My first question would be to the panelists: what are your recommendations for establishing boundaries and maintaining a healthy work-life balance? Amy, I'll pop this one back to you.
Okay, great. Thank you. I personally think work-life balance, for me personally, has always been very challenging, way before COVID, right? With family responsibilities and challenging job responsibilities, I think it's extremely challenging for me personally. So for boundaries, I think also I've been reading a lot about why is it that women have a tendency to not want to say no, right? And so I think it's psychologically and maybe through socialization, whatever, that women just have a tendency, I think more than men, to just feel guilty about saying no. And I think that is part of creating a healthy work-life balance. I find it for myself for sure. I know my friends kind of suffer from the same thing, is that we have a tendency to want to be everything to everyone all the time, and it's just not possible to do that. So over the last few years in particular, I've really tried to figure out a way that I can gracefully say no to certain things that I know that I can't successfully tackle, whether it's a personal commitment or it's, obviously I work in human resources, sometimes I get asked to help people find jobs or rewrite resumes, and I love doing all of those things for people, but sometimes it's just too much. So I have really practiced the art of saying no. And because otherwise, the self kind of suffers when you take on too much. You can't really do anything effectively when you have too much on your plate. So for me, it's been a really good practice to figure out how to do that. And what I found is when you can communicate to folks how much you would like to help on particular things, whether it's personal, business, or otherwise, and you explain the rationale, the response has been fine. So it really was practicing to do this and seeing what the reaction it can be for me to be able to feel comfortable to continue to do that. It's been super helpful.
Can I
Yeah,
step in real quick, Lindsay, and just
absolutely.
mention, Amy mentioned a few things, and I just want to throw this out there. A lot of people suffer from high functioning anxiety. What exactly does that mean? They're the what we call team members here that try to take on every role, every project, and they get overwhelmed, right? And usually you have to step in to help them with that. And you're wondering, why are they doing that? They're trying to be that perfect team member. They're trying to be the resource for everybody. That's a true mental illness. Now, not everyone that performs this way has true mental illness. Some of them, this is just the way, like Amy was saying, they're socialized that way. We've been told that we have to be that everything for everyone. The way we can change that is by changing our culture within the workplace. Just stopping it altogether, saying today, this is what we're going to do. We're all going to step away from the desk at lunch. We're all going to take walks, just making it something mandatory.
Yeah.
I like that.
May I build also, Lindsay, just because I agree with what Amy and Angela said, and I'll just share something that I try to say to as many, not just young women that work in the organization, but just anyone in general. It's, I start every day by what I say, accepting my reality, right? In whatever context. And what does that mean for me at this age and stage of my life at work and at home? It means, some days are better than others. It means I am not going to do perfect at everything, and that's okay. It means that I accept that, hey, there are moments I may miss out at work or at home because I'm choosing between the two, and that it's okay if I miss out. If I miss it with my kids, I know they're surrounded by people that love them as much as I do. If I miss out at work, I recognize that the contribution I make isn't defined in a singular moment, right? And so if I miss one moment, that's okay. It's okay, and I shouldn't walk around feeling bad about missing out. And so I think that's a mantra that, again, similar to Amy, pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, through pandemic, just accepting that reality, right? That I am a person too. I'm having to make choices every day, and one moment won't define me, right? And I think the more of us that can just support each other as colleagues like that, I think goes a long way, because it gives people permission, right, to make those choices, or to say, hey, I'm having a less than great day today.
I love the fact of empowering people to be able to make those decisions and not have to necessarily worry about the consequence of every decision that you do make. And Linda, I'm going to toss this one next to you. And so it's just about how can women, work colleagues better support one another to promote positive mental health in a virtual or physical space.
Thank you for that. I wanted to also add just one point to what the women were talking about before, and because we tend to be people pleasers, and I have trained myself to be happy for the things, like you're saying, Tara, that you did do, and not focus on the things that you didn't do, but also to learn to delegate. And that was a big one. Delegate at home, delegate in the office. There are people who can help. And that's kind of a good segue to how do we promote positive mental health with our colleagues, with the women that we work with, to listen to them and to really see them. And if they are truly suffering with, if they're beleaguered, if they're tired all the time, if they're showing up late for meetings, if they're missing deadlines, and to really draw them out in a safe space, in a safe conversation, because it can be anything. It could be illness with their family. It could be that they're moving house. It can be any sort of stress that they're dealing with. But if they feel that they can really be drawn out for you to offer not solutions, you're not going to solve everyone's problems. That's not our role. But to be able to say, well, for in my case, what worked for me was, and just maybe offer some suggestions. And also to realize we're not super women. I mean, we tend to think so, but we're not. But to really be observant about if they're more irritable than usual, and let them know that that's what you're observing, because I think they need to see that. They're not going to see it in the mirror necessarily. So I think we need to be their mirror and provide some suggestions about how we can support them.
Great. No,
Yeah.
that was.
I'm sorry, Lindsay.
Nope, you're good. Go ahead.
Thank you for that, Linda. I was just going to say, you really have to know your employees. So that involves a relationship that you have. Fostering a relationship with your employees are very important, because some people wouldn't know if their employee is sad one day or frustrated the next day if they haven't spoken to them in weeks or months. So they don't know anything about them. So it's important to kind of engage with your employees as much as you can.
And they're reticent to ask for mental health day. I mean, everybody just is, I'm sick, I have a sore throat, I have a stomach ache, it's all understandable. But very rarely will you hear someone honestly say, I need a mental health day. And often shows up concurrently with not showing up on camera.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's something we should talk about, mental health days. We actually speak about it on the job, say, hey, I may need to take a mental health day. So starting from the manager all the way out, it kind of creates, again, the culture.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And one thing just that I've experienced over the past couple of months is at Melissa and Doug, we've actually moved away from calling sick days, and we're calling them wellness days, because we want employees to be empowered and feel comfortable taking a day for their mental health if they need it. That doesn't mean you're sick. It just means that you need a break, and that's okay. So I think it's also just encouraging employees to also use their time off. I know I'm terrible at it because my work-life balance is definitely not the best, but it's really important. People need that break. People need that separation, and I think that's really important.
Yeah, agreed.
And just for the company allowing that or giving that to employees, they will feel comfortable, like Linda said, speaking to you where they need a little bit longer to connect with their family or connect with themselves. So I really love that idea of wellness days. I'm going to start using that. Thank you.
All right. Amy or Tara, was there anything else you wanted to add to that one?
I think just one comment I would make about the check-ins from the managers, right? It's so important for managers and supervisors to be aware of what's going on with their employees, like you said, Angela, just to know their employees. And I think that's one thing that's really suffered through the pandemic with remote work, is it's just that much harder to do that. It's so much easier when folks are in the office and you can just stop by and have coffee, or how was your weekend? I feel like a lot of that went by the wayside during remote work. It just wasn't as easy to do that check-in. So just an awareness.
That's great.
So what are other ways maybe you can check? I mean, depending on how many employees you have, I imagine some of the companies are very dense, but are there social hours over Zoom? Are there, game night over Zoom? What are other ways you can connect with the employees just to have an idea of what's going on in their space?
One of the simple things we did at Spin Master, because we've done that, as I said, we do jam sessions with all of our musicians and share your hobbies. But through the pandemic, organically, we got to the place where we took the first 5 minutes of every meeting, regardless of how many people were on the Zoom, to just simply check in. And to be able to look at each other on the tiles and be like, hey, how you doing? And who has a good story, right? And, did we all see that? And what do we think about that? Whether it was, happy, sad, funny. And I think that's something we've preserved in a way to try to create a sense of emotional proximity in a time when there's been no physical proximity. I can't sit across from you and look you in the eye and get a sense of how you're doing. But if we all show our face and just say, hey, how are we all doing today? What's going on? And then you can, scan and then the chats start. But I think that's been a very easy practice. And again, makes it okay to say, I'm not having a great day, or this has been really hard for me. But it's the first 5 minutes, and 5 often becomes 10, let's be honest, but it's time well spent.
That's great.
I think that's a terrific idea.
That's great.
Yeah.
All right, then moving forward, so our next topic of questions would be, how are companies and their leadership teams supporting their female employees' mental health? So an article that I read by Angie Spencer, who is a training and development industry researcher, there are 9 ways to empower female employees. A couple of these include recognizing and establishing goals around gender diversity and support professional development through mentoring and coaching. Her research also touches on diversifying management. Having talented women in leadership can help foster and grow aspirations for those just coming into the workforce or those looking to move up the ladder. Encouraging women to pursue opportunities at every level. By promoting women at the same rate as men, you show them that their skills are valuable assets to your organization. And another article I found interesting was by Energy Resourcing, which focused on equal pay and parental leave policies for men and women. The number one way to empower women is to amplify the female voice. Opportunities to speak, to network and engage with others in the industry, employees and leaders. So the first question that I have, and Amy, I'll throw this one back to you, are what are some ways your company's leaders encourage open dialogue around mental health within their teams?
So I think similar to what a couple of others have said is we've brought in some additional resources to just continue the dialogue. We had a health coach come and do a webinar on stress and breathing exercises and all of that. That was very well attended. And then most recently internally, we did a webinar on resilience. So we continue to talk about these things and give opportunities for folks to engage in these activities, which just takes away, I think, some of the stigma around it. We've also, continued to be flexible with work arrangements. So, we work on a hybrid schedule. So folks have that additional flexibility to be able to manage some of their, work-life balance issues, but we continue to look for ways to do that. We're about to engage in a wellness survey because we realize that we don't have all the answers. I think I know what might work for me, but I can't be the voice of every employee in our company. So we're about to launch a wellness survey to get feedback feedback from people about what would be most helpful for them. So our plan is to take the results from that survey and come up with other ideas.
That's great. Linda, can you hop in on that? Unless Tara, you know what, I saw you come off mute. So Tara, if you want to go.
It's okay. Linda, go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you, Tara. Yeah, those are all great. The I guess the key, we have done that. We've done surveys with our employees, and many good things have come out of it. For instance, now we're going to have a free subscription for every employee to Calm, so that they can, nobody has to worry about the expense of it, and they can actually get into the mindfulness, a little bit of meditation. We've done yoga classes as well, online, on Zoom. The thing that impresses me the most about our leadership is that Allison Ames, our CEO, actually has a one-on-one with each member of our team. So that's 80 one-on-ones, or 79 if you don't have kids, unless she speaks to herself. So it's 79 one-on-ones, and it used to be by team, but those were kind of check-ins during Zoom. Now they're one-on-ones, and they can speak about anything that's troubling them, anything that is of concern in the business or personally. She wants to know how you're doing personally, because so many of the mental health issues may not be those of the employee themselves. It may be of their family.
Absolutely,
And,
that's great.
I mean, so many of us have mental illness in our families, myself included, and we've been coping with it for years, and that weighs on us too, but it doesn't necessarily show up in the workplace that way, but we are coping with it. And so my point is that by having those check-ins, leadership at Beanstalk has been excellent in providing all kinds of workshops and seminars. I think I mentioned most of them. I mean, the one that's coming up is the UK team is going to go out gardening together, to be outdoors. We have a monthly get together, a lunch and learn, where we bring up a topic that will be troubling people. I mean, a lot of it is around African American experiences that have gone on, Asian experiences, and racial topics. It gives everybody a chance to talk and really bring out their feelings, and feel even more supported. So
that's wonderful.
Great.
Having 79 one-on-ones it's really impressive. It takes a lot, and that to me shows a lot of care for your employees. So Tara, did you want to say something as well?
I mean, I would echo. I think we've done similar things in terms of Calm and added benefits, but what I think I could offer that would be perhaps additive is we did shift our positioning around wellness and benefits from the employee to the family, right? And we altered benefit terms to make sure it was as inclusive as possible definition of family, right? And so whether that was children, spouses, partners, extended family members that may be struggling through this time, how could we push our benefit and wellness offerings further? So I think that's been a material change in building on Linda's comment. It's not necessarily always the employee directly, but it's anyone who's in their kind of immediate ecosystem. I think the second thing we've done is we've tried to really elevate our transparency on this topic, both in terms of what our starting points are on things like pay equity. And, we're at 98% pay equity around the world right now. So we feel really good about that. And, we have great female representation, but we've tried, like, historically, I think in this organization, those things weren't talked about openly. And so we've now made them very transparent, and to say, let us tell you about what this is. And let us tell you about what our plan to correct it is, or how we're going to sustain it. And if it's going to take us longer for whatever reason, let's be honest about why. We don't want you to think it's because we're not trying. Here's the reality for us, right? And so I think that's also helped, because through that transparent conversation, it's opened up more dialogue, right? And helped us get ahead of things that might be bothering people, or they may have made assumptions on top of, And so just that conversation is hugely helpful.
Absolutely. And then in terms of just employees being provided with guidance and easy access to mental health resources, where can employees find these? Amy, if you want to take that one.
Yeah, so I think we've talked about that a little bit already. We certainly provide the employees with the employee assistance program to help them, other medical benefits, leaves of absence, things like that. And that's routinely provided to everyone, and they're reminded about it regularly so that it's kind of always in the forefront that these things are available. And again, continue to look at ways to support people depending on where they are, understanding that there's not a one size fits all, I don't think, approach, and helping our managers recognize when their employees may need help. And certainly our HR teams are supporting the managers out there, making sure that, they're also offering those resources, whatever they may be.
Perfect. And then Angela, did you want to hop in on this one?
Oh, yes. I just had a couple of questions really about, I hear EAP a lot, and I know the sessions are usually very minimal. And some people may need a little bit longer. So I'm just hoping maybe there's some mental health backing with that, some mental health insurance, because sometimes the medical won't cover some of those concerns that that someone is experiencing. So that would be my question. Is there mental health backing along with that?
Tara, yes, you can
Yeah,
comment.
so I would say in our organization, absolutely, absolutely. And we've continued, Angela, to increase it through the pandemic years. And then in terms of, accessibility, I think I sometimes get the feedback, you're an over communicator, right? So does it become an overused skill in the sense that, we're hitting people from every direction. So it's on the, as soon as you go into our employee portal, it's right there in the resource center. It's right there at the start of every year. We issue, we talk about it's your employee experience reimagined, and we walk people through, not in like the benefit guide way, Angela, but in a real life way. Okay, here are all the things that are available to you and how easy they are for you to get to. And then the third thing we do, which is always interesting, right, to see what the level of trust is we host, myself and the great HR team, we host Ask Us Anything sessions. And where it's literally like we just go on Zoom with no agenda, with sometimes a dozen employees, sometimes it's hundreds of employees at the time. And we're like, hey, what's on your mind? What do you want to know about? And we find in those forums, questions come up around access, or we learn that people don't realize what we have. And so again, just keep trying to create space to say, okay, like ask, you can read it, you can ask us, we can send it to you, you can call this number, but just constantly let people know that it's there, right? And
thank you. Wow, your company is great. I think I'm going to come work for you
because
they have like the best.
And we are hiring people who love people.
They're the best of the best. But also to include, thank you for that, just reminding, and I'm sure in your area, they have Open Path Collective, which is a organization that provides mental health services at a lowered price. It's like $60 per session. Psychology Today is another benefit also to employees that maybe they don't want to go through their mental health services through the job. There's varying reasons why, but they also have that option. Psychology Today is a great contact for them as well.
Great, thank you for sharing that, Angela. Linda, did you want to add to that?
I wanted to say that I think that we're all experiencing in some way or another the retention problems that we're having with employees, of course, and that all of these are great ways, if they're expressed clearly and at the outset when you're doing interviews and you're hiring people, it's all a bonus for them. I mean, it's a bonus upon hiring. It's just they realize that this is a safe place. It's a place that understands them, where they can be comfortable, because not all mental illness is so obvious, and it can be anxiety disorder, which erupts from time to time. It can be OCD. It can be any of those things, and depression comes and goes. So I think it's just great that we all have so much going in the pipeline, and that we can express to people when they're coming on board, and also to retain people, because we have had people leave because they needed to get out of the corporate world and just go travel, and some because they really did get burnt out. And we learned from each of those people who moved on to do something like that. We really heard them, took note, and are course correcting so that we can really improve retention.
That's great. And you know what, a question that I kind of just thinking about now, just to whoever wants to take it, is in terms of retention and really nurturing and fostering, the younger generation that is coming into the industry. People tell me, oh, there's not a lot of young people anymore. And I was like, no, there is. It's just, again, it's just a different generation. So I guess for your companies, what have you found most helpful or most beneficial to empower that younger generation of women? And how do you connect them with female leadership to really foster that that mentoring, I guess, to take them to the next level? So Linda,
I would say to flatten the hierarchy. It's well, before COVID, ironically, we all went to open plan where everybody was sitting, right, 3 feet away from each other, including the CEO and the CFO, and everybody at the C-suite was in those seating as well. That visually flattened the hierarchy. Anyone was accessible. You could talk to anyone. The famous thing, because I'm a little bit older, is having the ability to speak to senior leadership when you're fixing your makeup in the ladies' room, the way that the men always had as they were, in and out of the men's room. So it's, I think it's the letting them know that it's permitted, and recognizing that this new generation expects it. They expect it. They want to know what their path is. If the path to that goal is not moving quickly enough, they will leave. They'll move on. So the opportunity cost of training people and investing in them and mentoring them and then having them leave is not good. So we find we also encourage sort of cross-fertilization to keep people interested. They may be, in our case, we're an agency, so they may be on one account, to be able to open the door so they can be on another account and maybe report to a different manager on that or learn a different style, and always keeping them interested with some new information.
That's great. Amy or Tara, do you guys have anything to add there?
Yeah, sure. I think, philosophically for me, just as a woman in the workplace, I believe in I call it the leave the ladder down approach, right? Which is every generation of women or talent that comes after me should be able to go up the ladder faster than I, right? And I should be able to propel them forward. That's an accountability I have, I think. And, and so what does that mean? It means about being vulnerable, sharing experiences, being honest with, what that next generation talent about the choices we all have to make at different times between personal choices and professional choices, and what are all the pressures and anxieties that come with those. I also think it's having sometimes what can be really hard conversations with young people, if I can say that, and I don't want to say millennials, but early talent, right, about what the role of a company is and what is their responsibility. Because I find oftentimes people will join an organization and it's like, well, what are you going to do for me? And what's my career path? And what's my course? And when are you going to advance my pay? And it's, for those of us that have been in the entertainment space, it's a very heavy rider, I find it comes with, of expectation. And so, a very important conversation I always think to have when you're mentoring or talking is, what is the role of a company, right? And architecting a career path and a career for someone. What is the accountability of a company as it relates to developing someone professionally? What are those? And then what does an individual need to take accountability for in terms of charting their own career and making choices and making sure they're clear about what they want and what they're motivated by, and all of those hard questions. And I think sometimes that gets overlooked, and especially in this dynamic, it's what are you going to do for me versus let's talk about, hey, what can we create together? And what am I going to do? And what are you going to do in kind? Right? Like that's an important conversation, I think, that sometimes gets overlooked.
Absolutely. Amy, do you have anything to add there?
Yeah, just a quick thing. I think, sometimes what I see is that, our company is very fast growing. And so there's a lot of tasks and projects and things that need to take place, right, to support the growth. And so sometimes that can take the emphasis off of the people side. All of the things that Tara just discussed are super, super important, talking talking to people. For instance, we're coming up with our mid-year review process, which will be a new process for the team here at Jazzwares. But the purpose of the mid-year review is really to have that career discussion, right? To understand, what do people need, and what's going to keep them engaged, and where do they see themselves. And I think that's a critical piece, is making sure that we're hiring the folks that are interested in leading others and mentoring others, and that becomes a critical focus for them, just as much as getting a project complete or getting some tasks completed. So it's a mindset shift in some cases. And so, we just need to continue to pay attention to that. I agree with Tara completely. The generation that's coming into the workplace now has completely different ideas about what success is and how to go become a successful professional than when I entered the workforce, so many years ago. And we've got to be aware of that. It's different.
Oh, absolutely.
We have so much to learn from them as well.
Agree, 100%.
And we have a mentorship program, and I get quizzical emails back. Did you mean that I should be your mentee or your mentor? And I said, I want you as my mentor. I said, mentors are not by age. Mentors are, I want a fresh perspective. So.
Absolutely. So you know what, we have gone, a couple of the questions we had left, I actually would like to toss it to AC to help us. I know we've had some questions from some of our guests here. And so I want to make sure we have time to get to those before we end today.
Hi again, everyone. This has been so wonderful. Thank you all. We do have one question from the audience. It says, from a manager's perspective, how do we better ask if the employee has the bandwidth to perform yet another task?
That's an excellent question. Very good question. And it goes back to what I was saying earlier about relationship, right? Because it's like, how do you present? How do you move? How do you ask this question? If you've never discussed anything with this person, you really don't know about them, this will be a little bit hard, right? I think you go to it gingerly and you're very careful with your words, and just present what you would like to have done and just hear their feedback, but hear their feedback in a human way. Give them room for, if they say, hey, I don't have the time, and just step back before you respond. I think that's the best way with any conversation, is just to open it up and then see what they say and then step back before you respond.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Tara, can you add to that?
Yeah, I think, I think there's always an honest question about capacity, right? And so before ever offering, the idea of something new, because most people, especially those who are high performers or highly motivated, will always just say yes, right? And so instead of starting with the opportunity of something else, I usually begin a dialogue with, like, how well do you think you're managing the current, book of work that you've got? What's preventing you from doing your best work? What support could I offer you to help you, get to those goals faster? And I find through those, kind of discovery questions to start the conversation, I get the texture I need on, are they feeling overwhelmed? Do they feel they're going to be successful with what's in front of them, before I offer the idea of, hey, is there more, right, that you could do? But that's generally where I start. I also, the other question that I often weave in is there things that, we've asked you to do that you find are low value to the organization that I could take away, right? And take off your plate, right? Because I find as leaders, we often lose sight sometimes of the number of requests that people have received of stuff to do, right? And you forget, right? 2 days later or 3 weeks later, hey, I asked you to do that, didn't I? Maybe that's no longer at the pace we move, right? Is important. So as I said, I tend to come at it from the other side versus the leading question.
That's a great suggestion. And one thing, what I see, I was kind of scrolling in the comments for a section, and Brittany had a really good question too that I want to make sure we touch on, is just, when you're dealing with leadership or a manager who's not as supportive of boundaries, personal boundaries, can you give some recommendations or suggestions on how to deal with somebody who has a hard time respecting your boundaries? So Linda, I'll start with you on that one.
Yes, I think that a key there is, and I myself am not the poster child for keeping it all in balance. And so I make it clear to my team, if I'm sending you an email with a task or something or a response at 10 o'clock at night, because that's free time for me, that it doesn't mean in any way that you need to respond that evening. You just respond during normal work hours. There's no pressure for you to be working in the evenings. I may choose to for my own benefit, for the benefit of the project. But the other thing I was going to say was that when presenting a new task, I would often say, well, this is good for your development. You can tell them in sales, right? This is good for your development because this will lead to this, or this gives you an opportunity to work in Latin America. You haven't done that before. And say, well, if you did that, then to Tara's point, what would need to come off of your to-do list in order to do it, and try to weave it in that way.
Great.
But as far as working with people with whom you don't resonate, I think just to again leave the door open for some discussion, and maybe it's those periodic check-ins or the talent assessments that happen twice a year, or in those kinds of a setting. That might be a safe space to take good feedback too. I think all of the feedback I've gotten in those sessions has been to my own benefit.
Amy, do you have anything to add there? And then we'll go to Tara.
Yep.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I think sometimes, a dialogue needs to happen where someone needs to just remind their manager in a nice way about the things that are on their plate, because, sometimes managers move at 1,000,000 miles an hour and, dole out assignments without maybe remembering that there are all these other things that this person is responsible for. So I think just a check-in about, you're asking me to do something. Did you, let's make sure you're aware that I have this and this and this and all these other things and deadlines, and maybe priorities can shift or deadlines can change, and, they can meet in the middle. But sometimes it's just a questioning, kind of open-ended dialogue about what's on the person's plate and how best they can, look at priorities and deadlines, et cetera, and figure out how to make it work on both sides.
So I know sometimes as being, obviously a little bit, younger in the industry, it is kind of tough to have those tough conversations with a manager, with somebody in a leadership position. So what would be your recommendation? This is open to anybody, just how to initiate that conversation. Like, look, I am available from 8:30 to 5:30, but I have a daughter, I have a family, I guess, what's the best way to start that dialogue to make sure you don't put the person on the defense and make it an uncomfortable conversation?
I mean, for me, it all starts with expectations, right? Establishing what are the expectations for the role. And, sometimes there's a disconnect between a manager and an employee about exactly what those expectations are. And I think there can be an open dialogue about that and come to some agreement about what it looks like. If maybe people are unavailable for certain hours, but they can agree that they're going to, check in first thing in the morning, or they're going to, do a check-in, at 9 o'clock at night, or whatever the case may be. But I think it's, certainly when people have those types of situations, we always offer up the services of HR too. Like, let's practice on how you're going to have that conversation, and let's talk about some of the things that you foresee might be problematic in the conversation, just to be able to get them, employees ready for having that realistic, kind of transparent dialogue with their supervisor.
That's great. Tara, can you add to that?
Yeah, I would absolutely echo what Amy said. It's about a conversation. And I often find that, we all, it's normal. I think it's human nature, and Angela, I'll let you nod, it's just, there's so many assumptions, right, that exist. And in the absence of a clear, direct conversation, we assume everything is urgent. We assume the expectation is that you respond in 5 minutes. We assume, right? And people start carrying these clouds of pressure over them. And something that I stole shamelessly from someone else early in my career that I've use with my team that I always share with others is just agree on a contract to communicate with your team, right? And so for me, what does that look like? I have a please read rule. I get hundreds of emails a day, but anyone who works closely with me knows if it's something you really want to get my attention or I want to get your attention, the first 2 words in the subject heading are just please read in all caps. And that's a signal from me to them and them to me that unless I respond to that in the same business day or 24 hours, that I'm going to be holding them back from doing something. Right. And I don't want to be a barrier. I want to be an enabler, and I want them to be an enabler to me in kind. And so it's okay, how do we demystify what's urgent, what's important, what needs to be responded to one evening or over a weekend? Please read. And I will tell you, whether it's been at Spin Master, financial services, tech companies I worked at before then, you learn very quickly that only about 5% of things are really that urgent and requires, actually, I think it's even less than that in the hundreds of things, right? Which just gives people permission, right? And then it also makes the conversation easier. It's not, well, Tara, I didn't get back to you. It didn't say, please read, Tara. So I put it lower on my work list. I'm like, fair, no problem.
But that's great though, because
but it's just like a way. So whether it's please read or whatever expression suits your personality and your company, but it just makes it so much clearer, right? For people to know like what's really important here and what requires a response in this moment versus can wait till later. Right.
I wanted to say one thing on behalf of the introverts in the world, because there are introverts and extroverts, and I constantly remind people that I work with that they take their information very differently, and that sometimes you just need to encourage them if they are not going to be, because in person, one-on-one, if they're talking to you and you're trying to have this contract for communication and doing it verbally, they may not speak. They'll go back to their office and they will write an email. Another thing I meant to say was, and they'll send it to you in email. And they don't deal with confrontation well. They may perceive that as confrontation, to your point, Lindsay, that it's difficult to do when you're talking to somebody at a more senior level. So I think it's a great book called Quiet that everybody should read. All about the introverts among us, and more than half the population.
All right, great. And yeah, I was gonna say, Angela, if you wouldn't mind kind of full circling it for us.
Oh, no problem. No problem. I like, oh God, you ladies are wonderful. Amy, Linda, Tara, you're doing an amazing job. I like that you spoke about these behaviors that we have to be aware of, understanding different personalities. That's a big job in itself. Actually, creating an area of fostering something where people can speak frankly to you and they feel like they can connect with you, understanding that there may be a different millennial version of this, how to speak or approach to them, making space for conversations and transitions. You are doing an amazing job. I just say, keep it up. I say be open to learning, as I am as well, because you never know who may walk into your office. And just always communicate clearly and make sure that you're actually modeling what you want your employees to do. That's the most important thing. Once we model those behaviors, they're more inclined to do them. And we're just not speaking at them, we're actually modeling the action for them.
Absolutely. Well, you know what? I mean, I know we're getting short on time, but again, thank you so much to my panelists and to Women in Toys for this opportunity. I loved learning from all of you today, and I definitely learned a couple of tips and tricks that I know that I'll be able to use going forward. So Janice or Mary Kay, I can push it back to you just for closing remarks.
That sounds great. Ooh. I'm back. That sounds great. I also wanted to thank all of you. I actually took like copious notes here. There were so many great takeaways that I thought were so valuable. Saying no, accepting my reality, like all of these things, all of you, thank you so much for sharing your stories, your perspective, and your time with us, and for everyone who joined us as well. Also wanted to thank the WiT staff. We can't do this without them. These are, kudos to everybody that contributed today. I'm our executive director, Mary Kay, and AC, and others that are behind the scenes making this all happen for all of you. Wishing everyone a good rest of your week. Hopefully we'll be seeing some of you in Las Vegas next week at the Licensing Expo. But again, stay on the lookout too. We recorded this. It will be made available on the Women and Toys website in the webinar archives. But again, thank you so much. And we always look forward to your feedback and thoughts. Have a great rest of your week.
Great. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.